Hello and welcome to our first video lesson for our new unit, which is all about the civil rights movement. So you guys are going to be following along with your packet of guided notes throughout this video. Make sure to hang on to it. You're going to turn in all 10 lessons at the end. So our topics that we're going to cover in our first lesson are that we're going to first define civil rights, make sure we have a solid working definition before we move forward. Then we're going to talk about a couple of amendments that helped expand civil rights in the past. After that, we'll talk about what's called Jim Crow laws and then move into how the civil rights movement gets started. So why are we learning this? This is a super important unit. It's very relevant to today. Of course, we know that racism and injustice still exist all around us, but I think it's important to take a look at how ordinary people, not just the Rosa Parks and not just the Martin Luther Kings, but regular people can actually come together, stand up for what they believe in, and create some change. All right, so on our guided notes, we're going to write down this definition of civil rights. And so when we talk about civil rights, we are talking about that fight for political, social, and economic rights for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, gay Americans, and females, women as well. And we're talking about the time between roughly around 1950 to the 1970s. So a bit longer than our past units. We're going to look at a couple of decades and how civil rights evolve. All right, so we said political, social, and economic rights. What do I mean by that? So first off, political rights are anything that has to do with our laws, right? Different rules that are created so that everybody has equal opportunity to our political process. We're also going to talk about some social rights, like the social norms and customs that we have as a group of people, and making sure that everyone, again, has access to the same things. And finally, economic rights, right? Money is super important. So at this time, we are also looking at ways to make things a little bit more equitable or more equal so that people are, able to make the same or close to the same amounts of money. And so looking at some past examples of gains in civil rights, I want to direct you to these three amendments. So we have multiple amendments to our Constitution over the years. But looking at numbers 13, 14, and 15, you're going to see some amendments that are focused on expanding civil rights. So this is back right after the Civil War in the mid-1800s. First, we have the 13th Amendment, and that is the amendment that banned slavery and made slavery an illegal institution in the United States. Right after that, we have Amendment number 14. Which also expanded civil rights. It gave everybody citizenship if you were born in the country. And that would include the people who were formerly enslaved. Those people gained citizenship at this time. And finally, Amendment number 15 gave Black men the right to vote. At the time of the 15th Amendment, no women had the right to vote. That's going to come later, and we'll cover it when we get there in the 20s. But these three examples show that there have been some gains in civil rights after the Civil War. But after that, a little bit of stagnation, right? A little bit of not that much progress. And this is why we see civil rights come out in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and be a huge movement for change. Okay, so our next definition I'm going to throw at you, we covered it earlier if you were here in class, but segregation is a word that explains how the U.S. really was for quite some time. And segregation means to separate. Right? The words look a little similar, can help you remember. Segregation is separating the races. White people on one end of the spectrum and minorities on the other. So you can see from this photograph, right, we have a waiting room that is designated for people of color, right? No white people allowed, and of course, no people of color where white society was. And so that was the reality of the South, is that the races were very, very separated. We call all of these states in red, right? This is the South, right? This is the Deep South. All of these places in red existed under what we call Jim Crow laws. And those are laws that were specifically designed and actually enforced racial segregation in the South. So all the small and big rules that really made it possible for the separation of races, those are called Jim Crow laws. A couple of examples. A long time ago, there was something called a poll tax. This is now totally illegal. You cannot do this. But in the past, there used to be a fee charged in certain places, mostly in the South here, right? That charged people money to vote. If you want to vote, you got to pay the fee, pay the tax before you cast your ballot. We also had things called literacy tests, which, again, if you were here, you got to experience how frustrating and unfair those tests really were, right? You have to, if you wanted to vote, you had to take a test. One wrong answer means you cannot vote. And of course, we know that in certain states, like there was no key, there was no right answer. It was up to the white registrar to determine if that person should get the right to vote. And so, of course, we saw so many cases of white people denying Black people the right to vote because of this literacy test. And finally, right, segregation or separation of public spaces, that is also an example of Jim Crow laws. All right, so shifting into how this movement begins. We got a couple of reasons. So there's not just one event that we can say, oh yeah, that is the start of the civil rights movement, but there's a lot of small things that occur. And two big ones I want to share with you start here with the Double V campaign. That means a double victory campaign. So right after World War II, we see this Double V campaign come out. And the goal is, hey, there are Black Americans fighting in the military in World War II. They are abroad, they are overseas, and they are helping us win the war. And they are in places that don't have racial segregation and our history of slavery. And so they're experiencing, these people, these Black men are experiencing what it looks like to be desegregated. And they take a look back at the US and think, why are we fighting for a war when we're going to go home and not be free? And so the Double Victory campaign was Black Americans saying, we don't want to just win the war abroad. We want to win the war at home. And we want to start to shift towards having equal rights for all people. This is an amazing quote by a Black military soldier. He says, "Why should I shed my blood for Roosevelt's America?" And Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the president at the time. That's who he is referring to. Right? For the Jim Crow, for that segregation in the South, for the Negro-hating South, for the low-paid, dirty jobs for few dollars of relief, and the insults, discrimination, police brutality, and perpetual or ongoing poverty to which Negroes are condemned, even in the more liberal North. I mean, what a powerful statement saying, why should I die? Why should I shed my blood for this country that is not treating me like it is treating white people? And so it's people like CLR James who come home, seeing what they have seen and wanting to start to create some change at home. One of their main goals was to desegregate the armed forces. And finally, they are successful. President Truman, who is the president after Franklin Roosevelt in World War II, he passes what's called an executive order. And that just means like a order, a decision made by the president that is, immediately put into law. It doesn't need to go through Congress. The president can just say, what, this is the order, this is how it's going to be. And so they were successful in getting Truman to pass Executive Order 9981, which desegregated and ended racial segregation or separation in the military. And finally, we have the murder of Emmett Till. And this is a really sad story. This is a 14-year-old boy, a Black boy, who was murdered for supposedly flirting with a white woman. Now, Emmett Till was from Michigan. He's from the North. Norms are a little different. He's visiting family in the South. And this woman accuses him to her husband and his friends at the time. She accuses him of having flirted with her and said like inappropriate comments and touching her. And later we find out that she made it all up. He did nothing wrong. Um, she accuses him of being inappropriate towards her. And these grown men tracked down this boy, pulled him out of like his bed at night, and murdered him. Dumped him in a lake. It was a terrible murder, right? Like it was seen as as it was, right, super aggressive, inhumane, and quite disgusting. And so it really served to show how bad things had gotten, right? How absolutely brutal segregation was in the South. How these men got away with it. The all white jury let them go. They talked for less than an hour, examining all the evidence, and they just believed this white woman and didn't take into consideration any of the other factors. And so the murder of Emmett Till really just amplified how bad things had gotten. And so it's because of that event, because of the work Black soldiers did while abroad fighting World War II, that this movement, the civil rights movement, really starts to take hold and kick off in the early 1950s. And so that is it for our introduction, guys. You're going to review those notes that you just took. Go ahead and write your summary in your own words. Be thinking, hey, what are those key things that you learned today? And in 1 or 2 sentences, go ahead and summarize that. So your notes are never complete unless there is a summary at the bottom. So go ahead and do that. And then remember, you decide where you want to go next. Do you want to continue with your notes? Go ahead and click to video 2, or if you want to get started on a project, that is all right as well.